April showers bring May flowers, but old school RuneScape leagues bring me not play very many games in April. In case you're unfamiliar, I made it my mission to play 100 video games from the past 30 years and rank them all. There are more details, but that's the gist. Here's the ranking as it stands currently. Games from 1997 to 2006. From a cursory perusal, you can see that new and old games alike can be great, middling, or just bad. For the first half of April, I played... Oh, I have it on a different line. 2007's Recettear, S.T.A.L.K.E.R, and Eternal Sonata. 2008's Mighty Jillof and My World, My Way, and 2009's Fragile Dreams, Farewell Ruins of the Moon, Cursed Mountain, and Machinarium. Oh, and 2010's Space Funeral. Last time, I hinted at playing a 67-hour game from 2008, and if you guessed Persona 4, you are correct. Then again, with how these videos unfortunately released, thank you internet providers, that was probably only a day or two ago. But you also might have caught that I didn't actually play it. So what gives? The eagle-eared among you may have also heard it's what I played for the first half of April. The latter half was eaten up by the mention right at the top of the video, old school RuneScape's limited time game mode, Leagues. If you're unfamiliar, Leagues is a time of the year where with a fresh account, a whole bunch of things are boosted, you get fun modifiers, and a certifiable city's worth of a laundry list of tasks to complete. The reward being cosmetics. It's a fun diversion that sucked my life away and I simultaneously love and hate it. So, no Persona 4 this month. Anyway, games! 2007. Recettear, an item shop's tale, is an RPG developed by Easy Game Station and published by Carpe Fulgur for Windows. I picked it because it was a recommendation from my wife, sort of. I've definitely heard of and dabbled with Recettear, but not much. You begin the game as Recette, a girl whose father went and got himself into a boatload of debt. Q-Tier, a fairy debt collector whose goal is to help you run an item shop to pay off the large sum over time so you don't lose your house, of course. So you open up Recettear. Capitalism ho! The gameplay is split up in two parts, running the store and delving the dungeons. When you open up the shop for a shift, customers come and go with their wants and needs. Your job is to swindle them out of, provide them goods in exchange for money. The mechanic is that someone will approach you wanting to buy a specific item. It has a price that you can adjust to earn more. Some customers pay more, some less. Then there are market trends to factor in as well. But where do you get your goods? 3 ways. Purchasing items wholesale to sell at a markup, buying them from customers, and getting them for free from dungeons. Good business practices get more and more complicated as you go on, all at a good pace of introduction, which is tied to your merchant level. So if you're doing well, you can get access to more mechanics faster. Going into dungeons is the other biggest chunk of playtime. It is a simple, top-down hack-and-slash affair with randomized layout dungeons. To go in them, however, you must procure adventurer cards by meeting with those adventurers in town. As much as the game is very much a visual novel somewhere in its heart, when you have various interactions, you progress character storylines until they give you the cards to be able to take them into the dungeon. Each adventurer costs a nominal fee to hire and take out, and gets more expensive as they level up. All of these activities are bound by your time limit. You are given weekly deadlines for your debt repayment, and each day is made up of 4 chunks. Opening the store takes a chunk, going out into the city takes 1, and adventuring takes 2. The balancing act of making as much money as possible while trying to complete storylines is a compelling gameplay loop. Speaking of loop, if you don't make a debt deadline, you reset the game with a handful of goodies, roguelikeishly. I didn't know because I beat the game without missing any deadlines. I only realized this was a thing when I was watching someone else play after the fact. Anyway, I enjoyed bouncing around partially because of the characters. Every interaction with them generally showed a bit more of them, while keeping enough held back for me to eagerly chase down every flashing location which indicated those interactions. All this only limited by the debt that needed to be repaid. Art was also charming, within the dungeons at least. The character sprites are 2D, the enemies too, but with a distinct look of claymation, and then all of the backgrounds are 3D. I feel like people made a big deal about Octopath Traveler's mix of pixel art and 3D graphics a decade later, but it felt like a tremendous success here. Maybe it's all the lighting that people love. I guess I will say the character artworks all hover in the moe space. Not really a negative, just what it is. The music is fun here too, when it was there. I don't know if this was a Linux-specific issue, but the music would regularly just stop for a minute or so before it came back. Bizarre! If it were just the gameplay, I would have been happy to roll credits and leave it be. But the game's got wit, too. Characters are funny without falling too much into tropes, with one exception, and it never felt like anyone outstayed their welcome with scenes. Which is a plus, but the truly bizarre thing that always made me chuckle is what people bring in to sell to the shop. I think the only thing I ever saw were treasures and food. Old man selling his beef bowl for pension, man on hard time looking to sell his grandma's apple, or woman selling can of peaches from her husband's mistress's place. And you know what? I'd put that right back on the shelf and sell for a profit. Capitalism ho! Recettear bought the 6th place on the list. It fell and felt the same place as Cute Night for me. The things that brought it up past Cave Story, however, were its addictiveness of fun play. It nailed giving the just one more day feeling. But in total, it just wasn't as interesting in the if I had to give this game to a me that hadn't played either, which would I give aspect as Robot Alchemic Drive. So, 6th it is. S.T.A.L.K.E.R, Shadow of Chernobyl is an FPS developed by GSC Game World and published by THQ for a lot. I picked it because I've technically owned it for over a decade, and it's one of those games you hear a lot about, and I was curious. S.T.A.L.K.E.R opens with a lightning strike on a vehicle. Someone survives and is dragged to a traitor who revives you. The only clues to your identity? A tattoo of the word stalker, and a picture on your PDA telling you to kill a man named Stralock. The trader sets you up with some basic equipment and has some jobs for you. You are in the zone, not the mental state, a technically uninhabitable region around the area of Chernobyl power plant post-disaster. The zone is stuffed with dangerous mutated creatures and those looking to cash in on its valuable treasures and mysteries. The gameplay loop is difficult to describe. Not in the same way as something like Pathologic, but let's just break it down. You'll be walking a lot, occasionally accosted by enemies, monstrous or human, and then somewhere in between. And that's kind of it. I still find it hard to say that that's it, though. There is a texture to walking to places, the silence only broken by firefights and ambiance. Looking back on my time in the zone, I feel like I didn't engage with the world as much as I should have, but I'm also glad I didn't. Many of the quests have you going from one area to another to do what amounts to MMO quests. Kill some things, find something, etc. Which is fine, but even delving into them makes the entire structure of the game feel loose. Which makes a certain amount of sense, as the game was in a bit of a development hell. The zone is left with equal parts desolate wasteland and absolutely brimming with people and monsters. Things I would want a sequel to do, which certainly could be there, would be a truly open world instead of splitting the zone into zones. I don't think it would make the world feel so small, and then maybe a bit less move speed to go with it. I'm not entirely sure how to split the difference. Less creatures would be on my wish list as well. More bars, maybe, like a hunger bar. Technically, my character got hungry on occasion, which was solved by stuffing a can of something down my throat. I want the world to be more of a character, I guess. Let it have room to breathe and threaten the player itself, rather than relying on a bunch of enemies. But alas, enemies there were in abundance. With no small amount of difficulty, I pushed past them. Much can be said about playing games on different difficulties. The different friction experienced in play can drastically alter one's experience. Sensing something at the difficulty selection screen, I did a search. While I wouldn't call it universal, the majority opinion was thus: play it on Master. I think the only other game I've played that felt like a tough but fair experience on the highest difficulty was Witcher 3? I feel like I'm not really stretching to come up with other examples. I tried looking up what games benefit from highest difficulty, and the results were about what I expected, with one interesting caveat reflected in some of the answers. As long as you already had experience with the game. Halo was listed, but I always felt like Legendary made things feel too spongy. Maybe it's just been too long since I played. But when I'm settling on a 30 to 60 hour experience, the difficulty shouldn't just be about punishment or challenging skills I don't have yet. Being able to play the highest difficulty on the first go around and not suffer for it is impressive. I end my digression. With slight trepidation, I picked Master. If this game did not have quick save, I would not have beaten it, which creates a secondary thorn. Creating specific places you can save would be excessive in S.T.A.L.K.E.R as it is, but saving anywhere eliminates the risk and thrill of play. However, playing on Master and not building up a huge stack of cash from quests meant I was always a bit of a rat, rummaging through whatever I could find for equipment. So it was the best middle ground that would accommodate me. Hard enough that even pulling through every firefight still puts pressure on my resources, so that finishing out missions was still a challenge. I still don't know if this is true, but in my ideal version, you could only save at the traders. This version would also require so many tweaks and balances to the formula that I don't think you could get there with this first game. Adding to the difficulty is the accuracy of weapons, which I begrudgingly admit feels correct, if not good. Aiming at a thing rarely meant I'd be hitting the thing until late enough in the game where my weapons were actually accurate enough and the quarters were close that I'd be in proximity to them. I just thought of a funny system to fix this, where you can spend time at the range adjusting your sights on your weapon. This coming with the caveat that you have to shoot your own precious bullets to do so. Off-the-wall mention, but this game was gorgeous to me. It's funny to say about a relatively color-mute game that is filled with dilapidated ruins and garbage heaps, but it's true. There was something peaceful about walking down the road in the zone. The only other thing I'll mention is that reloading those quick saves sometimes resulted in bizarre things happening. Enemies being already aware of your position or immediately taking different actions. Better than the alternative, I think, but really bizarre nonetheless. Also, it resulted in the only times the game would hang and crash. On reloading, it would get stuck on what I assume where the enemies were and what they were doing. S.T.A.L.K.E.R Shadow of Chernobyl snuck its way into the 8th spot, which really caught me off guard. I think most games I get a good idea of where they'll fall within an hour of so or play. I wasn't sure with S.T.A.L.K.E.R until I rolled the credits and actually began ranking it. It got so many points for me in vibes alone. The setting is one that is endlessly intriguing to me, especially actually reaching the end. In the end, I found it comparable to Cute Night in its purity of vision with flawed execution, though Cave Story's more polished nature still let it come out on top. Eternal Sonata is an RPG developed by Tri-Crescendo and published for Bandai Namco for, well, it's complicated, but Xbox 360 and PS3. I picked it because, well, I heard Tumblr user Procopets talk about it once, and the premise seemed bizarre, but charming. I played it on 360 because that's what I had on hand. The premise for Eternal Sonata is that it takes place in the dying dreams of composer Frédéric Chopin. Sort of. The world is certainly devoted to sticking to the music theme. I suppose the actual premise is that Polka, a girl who tries to sell floral powder, is being ignored for the far cheaper mineral powder. A young man, Allegretto, and his younger brother, Beat, are also concerned about the taxation of their town. So, both parties are going to talk to the local count, Waltz, about this problem. RPG ensues. The gameplay of Eternal Sonata is yet another take on turn-based combat. Each character has tactical time and action time. Tactical time is essentially before the turn starts, and action time is for taking, well, actions. Combine this with various other little details, like a 3D battle space, a light and shadow mechanic, and a combo counter that affects special moves, and you've got a pretty unique spin on the formula. I mentioned I specifically played on 360, because I didn't realize that the version differences were so drastic. Eternal Sonata released for Xbox 360 first. When it came out on PS3, however, they had added or changed a lot of stuff. Combat was harder, cutscenes were changed, even some more playable characters. I don't think playing the PS3 version would have drastically changed my opinion of the game, but it's worth keeping in mind. I had higher hopes for this game than was really warranted. It's less of a hidden gem than a hidden novelty. There are a variety of things that slowly ticked my estimation of the game lower, and not enough things that improved that impression. Flashbacks to moments that happened mere moments ago, progression of mechanics that felt more punishing than anything else, and a story that explains why Chopin was a musician and not a writer. The most unusual aspect of the game, however, are its educational slideshows, a periodic interruption that tells of Chopin's real human life. Sadly, these also got a little old, as they were somewhat repetitious and ventured into the maybe he felt this way about a specific thing. Who knows? They started as a fun parallel of his life and the story in the fantasy world, but towards the end, they realized that it's a damn RPG, and I guess we're gonna have to fight a godlike figure at some point. The strongest points of this game were its opening hour and its closing minutes. Art of all kinds sure loves to look directly at those who perceive it and say its core message or theme directly to you. It has been done since the beginning of time and will be done forever into the future, because unfortunately, they are lessons that always need to be learnt. People trying to tell you to be yourself, that we need to be careful about how we treat our planet, how we need to stop mistrusting people, you can't let certain tragedies be forgotten lest they be repeated, etc. Eternal Sonata composes the 24th place on the list. It felt similar to Okami to me, a unique RPG that was dragged down by various elements, but no pervert bug and a more interesting battle system brought Eternal Sonata above Okami. I could also think of a comparison to D2 in how it handles the real-life aspect, but that game has a lot more charm for me. If you want Chopin in your life, just listen to a bunch of stuff he's written and read his Wikipedia page. 2008. Mighty Jollof is a platforming game developed by, well, it's 3 people. Developer Anna Anthropy, artist James Harvey, and music by Andrew Toops. Released on Windows and Mac. I picked it because from a cursory glance, I was charmed by the Wikipedia page. The game is a lesbian BDSM dynamic in platformer form. You play as the submissive who is kicked to the bottom of the tower and must get back to the top in order to earn the boot-licking you so desire. The gameplay is jumping. You have a large jump, you can interrupt it, and a glide. Obstacle spikes and enemies are the only things to halt your progress. Checkpoints are, surprisingly for the setup, forgiving. That's it. The whole thing takes less time to beat than anything on my list, I think. The jumping felt fine, and getting to checkpoints was satisfying. I was further amused at what I might be reading too much into. The action of using your jump, cancel, glide was somewhat mimicking the vibe of the game's namesake. Mighty Jillof ranks 35th. Ooh, it ranks low, because there's just not a lot to it. Lesbians, dykes, and BDSM oh my is not something we see a lot of in games, especially in 2008. But the only unique aspect is their presence. There is not a particularly large story to be told or gameplay to write home about, which is expected of such a small indie title. But Cave Story is an example of something that is more substantial. There is also the fact of certain things about the developer's personal life being reflected in the game, and that those elements are less than great, to say extremely diplomatically. While I hope all parties are doing better or are better people now, it doesn't change what's here. I had a bit here about the development of games for what makes it into the game, or people involved being distasteful, and what aspects get in. In this case, it falls into the territory of going into the games sight unseen. You could write whole essays on this moral gray area of these factors. Is the person still doing harm? Is the game free? Does it matter if you never talk about it to another person? What if they're privileged or not? Are they alive? Dead? Does any of it even matter? To all of it, I throw up my hands and say, I don't know, it was a fun premise for a game, but didn't really hold up to being anything more than that. Death of the author, I guess. It does bring up something worth talking about in game development as a whole. You could see it all the way through my list in the best games and the worst games, from Blazing Dragons to Mother 3. They are reflections of their creators, from independent devs to big groups, and even auteur devs with a singular vision have teams working on the games to bring that to life. It says a lot that the man in a dress joke is so pervasive that it is in both the best and worst games. But that's far from the only distasteful imprint left on any of these games. Maybe it hurts less when we see a large dev team ship something bad in it, because it's certainly not everyone's wish to include the bad thing. But when it's a singular person as the driving force, it leaves an even worse taste in the mouth. Maybe no one's perfect. Certainly, as a trans woman, at least one person among the hundreds of people involved in any of the games I played wouldn't like me for that fact alone. Even the person who makes a game I can identify with a lot more is someone I don't agree with. Pobody's nerfect, I guess. My World, My Way is an RPG developed by Global A Entertainment and published in North America by Atlas for DS. I picked it because, actually this is another Tumblr thing, though I can't remember who mentioned it. I just saw pout points and I was enamored. The premise is that you are a princess. You have gotten everything you've ever wanted and now you want a boyfriend. Well, it can't always be realistic, I suppose. So you throw a party to find one. There's an adventurer who is the most handsome you've ever seen, but he doesn't respect your princessness. He only thinks an adventurer would be a good match. Well, I guess now's the time to become an adventurer, isn't it? The gameplay is, and I wrote this a quarter of the way through the game, and confirm it now, dead simple. Go to a region, walk around the region, completing quests. Said quests range from killing a certain amount of enemies or finding a certain amount of a resource. After you're done, go to the town in the region, get the key to the gate, fight a boss maybe, go through it. Next region, rinse and repeat, with even more enemies and more resources required. The turn-based combat does not evolve much past its opening hours. You get some additional spells, a bit higher emphasis on weaknesses, but not much else. The princess herself is great. She's a really fun mix of hyper-confident, bratty, and earnest. She expects things to go her way. It's her world, after all. But she's not above helping people either. She's also smart enough to notice the repeating characters in town after town. The game is incredibly grindy. Monsters required relatively little thought to work through. While that makes for a fine passenger game, it gets tedious when the game is all you're playing. Thanks to watching Star Trek DS9, it was made much more tolerable. I didn't have a long section here, but I really want to emphasize this game is grindy. Anyway, the two parts that make the grind not as intolerable are having a good buffer to spend a dozen extra hours with the game. When you go to rest at an inn and recover stats, you can also eat a meal beforehand. These always kept my purse light, but over time they give a nice stat boost. The other is that you can pout for extra XP and money and items, all of which lower the time to accomplish your goals. Ah yes, pouting. Pout points. From my cursory glance on Tumblr, I had estimated them to have a bigger impact on the game as a whole. While they are well incorporated, they aren't nearly as game-breaking as would have been funny. Your entire list of pouts is available to see from the start, changing the terrain, raising and lowering enemy levels, the aforementioned boosts, making enemies reappear on tiles, and then there are the combat pouts. Before combat, you can choose to go first or ignore the fight entirely. During the fight, you can use them almost as spells, acting as stuns and silences. All in all, it was an interesting addition to the formula. It was all diegetic, too, amusingly. The most powerful of your pouts, I didn't mention, is the ability to auto-complete quests, one I used much more often towards the end of the game. That only hurt me in the end, as it turned out, because I got to the end with a little lower level than needed and died a lot. Mostly my own hubris. But keeping enough pout points meant there was never a penalty for dying, which I loved. It's her world, her way, after all. Why should there be a penalty for losing a fight? It occurred to me that My World, My Way is a perfect car game, a term I had never thought of until playing this. A car game is one that is perfect for playing while a passenger in a car. I guess a better term would be a passenger game, as I used earlier. That would account for other modes of transport in which you are not the one in charge. In any of these scenarios, nothing overly pressing is happening in the game that you couldn't lower your game, take in the scenery, or chat with someone nearby. They are a great way to kill the downtime in transit. My World, My Way pouts its way to 28th place. While the gameplay and story is cute, it overstays its welcome for how much simplicity it's courting with. It had more on offer than the arcadey, replayable games, but its length dragged it under Metal Wolf Chaos. 2009! Fragile Dreams, Farewell Ruins of the Moon is an action RPG developed by Crescendo and Namco Bandai Games and published by a couple of companies for Nintendo Wii. I picked it because fun cover Wii game that had moon in the title. That simple. The intro for this game did not help me set expectations correctly, but the intro is that a boy, Seto, had been living with his grandfather in an observatory. When the old man kicked the bucket, he buried him and was told to seek out the glowing tower in the distance, as there might be more people there. The unspoken thing that is certainly on the back of the box is that something has happened to cause most of the human population to die or vanish, and for ghosts and demons to walk among what's left of the living. The opening hours convinced me that this would be a Silent Hill for kids, with a definitive anime bent. The impression was whittled away over time. While it certainly keeps its overall themes in the department of somber, the gameplay left more to be desired. It's hard to even qualify a gameplay loop, other than going to a place and beating things to death with implements. So, I guess that's the loop, along with some cutscenes? The things you are beating to re-death are mostly ghostly animals rather than demons, I think. Dogs, birds, and the legs of children will menace you throughout. This is a Wii game. When one thinks of Nintendo and their consoles, one will undoubtedly think of their gimmicks. Fragile Dreams is no exception. Their gimmick lies entirely within pointing at the screen and the Wiimote's speaker, so all things considered, fairly minimal. And I think that is where these gimmicks work the best. Your pointing is in fact a flashlight, though the game isn't that dark. Maybe my CRT was too bright? The audio cues from the Wiimote indicate where your enemies are, as they are all partially invisible until they approach, revealed or weakened only by your flashlight. The combat and RPG elements aren't great. The combat itself is fine. Run around, dodge attacks, smack things. Occasionally use ranged weapons, obviously aiming with the Wiimote. Sometimes use the Wiimote to see where things are coming from, all good and fine. And it draws more comparison to survival horror because you can oftentimes just run past enemies. But you shouldn't necessarily do that. The RPG elements feel very shoehorned here. You get slight health and damage buffs for engaging in combat enough to level. All that only partially necessary at all. I think somewhere between half and 2/3 of the way through the game, I tried rushing just past every enemy. That worked great until the last boss, where I had very little health and damage to help. The last boss tried my patience. A lot. It still only took a couple of tries, but design-wise, there was only one boss that even used the gimmicks they had in place. It was a good boss, but only one is weird. Getting to the last boss was also interesting. The first area of the game, I expected some light puzzle and exploration in each area I'd visit. The second area shook that up a bit, but I was still similar enough. The third area was simplified. Then it told me to backtrack to the first two areas for specific items. Then the rest of the game was almost entirely linear. But it didn't shake things up in ways that felt fresh so much as, oh, we're doing this now, I guess? I enjoyed the ambience in the world. Exploring abandoned and crumbling buildings was great. The environments did a good job of being spooky and run down, but not excessively scary. Also, there's cats. Equip a cat toy, mash the A button to wiggle at cats and make friends. This mechanic has absolutely no bearing on anything that I could tell. You could just make friends with cats. Fragile Dreams, Farewell, Ruins of the Moon lights its way to 28th place. It felt like it was reaching for the moon and hit a power line instead. It's not doing enough interesting things and not doing too many bad things. Cursed Mountain is a survival horror co-developed by Sproing Interactive and Deep Silver Vienna and published by Deep Silver for Nintendo Wii. I picked it because it was a funny-looking Wii game. It opens with a mountain climber, Frank Simmons, climbing a mountain. Anyway, he was hired to climb this specific mountain to find a terma, a hidden Buddhist teaching, by some British guy. The terma was hidden on the mountain, Chomalonzo. The local practitioners of Buddhism believe Chomalonzo to be the embodiment of the goddess Palden Lamo. However, Frank did not perform all of the rituals to rightfully respect the goddess before attempting to summit. Wouldn't you know it? Ghosts. So, Frank's brother, Eric, comes to rescue him. The game is a fairly linear experience. Given any goal you have, there isn't that much space to get lost. Go forward, use mystical ice axe to blast and purify ghosts, continue. Being a Wii game, it does indeed utilize the motion controls. I think the motions themselves are fine, but being a Wii game, they are sometimes finicky to make work right. Swing your controller around to purify ghosts, run and climb faster, or pointing at the TV to fire energy blasts. If it had more accurate tracking, I might have been slightly less frustrated in spots. The only real thing the game has going for it is its setting. Prop to the developers that the utilization of the Buddhist beliefs and mythology is not on its face racist. I never had the thought, wow, Buddhism seems scary, nor did that seem the intent. The haunting and curse of the mountain is entirely a result of disrespecting the religious practices of the native people. Ghosts trying to kill you isn't just a feature of this sect of Buddhism. That's where the interest ends, however. Outside of the lessons that Eric learns as he climbs Chomolonzo and how they relate to Buddhism, there isn't a lot going on. Greedy English guy, Scottish brothers that have minimal depth, an American wooing a girl, Yogini who's on the evil-ish side of things, but honestly, who can blame her? Cursed Mountain climbs its way up the list to 39th. That might seem exceedingly low, it kind of is. But outside of the setting, there really is nothing. The gameplay is tepid and repetitive, and the story of Eric Simmons is rote. Machinarium is a point-and-click adventure game developed and published by Amanita Design for just about everything. I picked it because, God, I've seen this thing around so many times, and it has been lauded as a good game. The opening is a little robot being carried out of a mechanical city and dumped in a trash heap. You've got to help him get back together and get back to the city. The game is puzzles. It's a point-and-click adventure game with puzzles. Grab items, combine items, solve box puzzles. The only part that stood out to me were art and music. The game has a very aesthetically pleasing little world, and its music is a lot of fun. The sound design for when the little friend couldn't do something pissed me off to high heaven. I guess the actual factor for whether you'd enjoy it is puzzles? Machinarium was actually instrumental for me figuring out why I don't care for games of this ilk. I like puzzle games like Portal, Cube, or Talos Principle, but I always get impatient with point-and-clicks. The reason? Your available tools. Take Portal. You only ever have the portal gun. You know exactly what it does. While the environment might change or give you new external tools, the way you interact is singular. You have a gun that puts a portal on one place and another, and that's it. As you progress, the portal gun works exactly like it's supposed to. In point and click, the leaps in logic, no matter how small, just get on my nerves rather quickly. Machinarium builds up to 30th. To me, it's very similar to Neverhood, but it just wasn't as charming, I guess? Maybe at this point in the 100, I'm just more tired of point and clicks. I don't know. I do still have at least one on the list, so I guess we'll see. 2010. Space Funeral is an RPG developed and published by the Catamites for Windows. I didn't really pick it. My partner suggested it. It opens with Philip waking up and going to search for the City of Forms. The gameplay is RPG Maker. It's not tuned to be a challenge at all, more so to provide pushback to avoid just walking through the levels, but also provide a level of humor from the various battle interactions. The whole game is surreal, but with a fairly solid internal logic. Reminded me a lot of Helix. I didn't put the term art game as what kind of game it is, but it is definitely more art piece than game. Space Funeral, it's 14th. Honestly, I almost didn't write it up for this month in spite of beating it, because I almost forgot I played it. While I couldn't tell you specifics, I can tell you I liked it. I couldn't even write that much about it. Honestly, I'd say just go play it. It's free and like an hour long. So that's April. I'm writing this and hoping I can upload it at the actual start of May like I'd like, but who knows? Up next, I will definitively play Persona 4 before playing anything else. I bent the rules this month because I knew RuneScape Leagues was around the corner and needed some shorter games to play. After that, though, 2010's other games are Vanquish and Shiren the Wanderer, the Tower of Fortune and the Dice of Fate. I'll go as far as revealing 2011's, because there's a couple of larger ones. Ni no Kuni, Wrath of the White Witch, Pandora's Tower, and Lord of Arcana. Of course, I'm only at Adamant rank, now Rune, in Leagues, so I still have a couple thousand points to go to Dragon. Then I'll move on. Thanks for watching. Have a wonderful day.